Back when I started hunting, I started bow hunting for deer in 1955. And all through that time, it's been traditional bows, recurves and longbows. I never had the desire to get into the high-tech part of it because I guess it wasn't as romantic as the traditional type archery. And that's a big part of it, you know, the romantic part of it, the history of bows and arrows. This part of archery has that kind of history to it, and it makes it even more interesting. The thing I like about the traditional archery, it puts more of a challenge into it. The idea of using a recurve bow or a longbow puts more of a challenge into the hunt. So consequently, when you are successful at taking a deer hunting this way, the rewards are greater. You feel like you've really accomplished something, and at the same time, you've hunted in the way that your forefathers hunted, you know, in the way that hunters have hunted with bows and arrows since time began.
The legacy. In days of old, when knights were slain with iron-tipped arrows through mail of chain, and Indians on horseback who shot buffalo through and through, the bow and arrow of days gone by lives still today through you and I. For every time we take a breath, for every heartbeat in our chest, for every time we loose the string to send the feathered shaft to wing, we keep the spirit of the bow alive. So all today will know this is the kind of archery passed down to us through history. And it's up to us, you and I, to keep this legacy alive. So teach a child to shoot a bow, then watch the joy within them grow. And someday when they are grown, they'll teach children of their own. We share our love for archery by passing on this legacy, so even after we are gone, the feathered shaft will still sing its song. I had a chance to get some property up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and it was a long way from home. It's about 400 and some miles up there across the Straits of Mackinac, and then take a left and go way down. But I went in with some other guys, and we had a chance to buy 400 acres at a pretty reasonable price back then. So it's 400 acres with a trout stream that goes down through it. And the trout stream is called Armstrong Creek. And before I actually started hunting much up there, there's a story. It's a story poem about Armstrong Creek, and it's about a ghost. The story is about a legend of a ghost that resides along Armstrong Creek. And because Armstrong Creek at one point meanders down through this low cedar swamp, and it seems like there's always some mist hanging over that swamp. And I'll recite the poem to you. Some of you may have heard it, but I know it by heart. So it goes like this. Armstrong Creek is a special place where whitetails get real old. No one ever goes there because it's haunted, so we're told. Years ago, a man named Armstrong came to pan for gold. Hostile Indians took his scalp and left him naked in the cold. They say his ghost is still around, that he's looking for his hair. Now, most folks believe the story, and no one ever hunts there. Well, I don't believe in ghosts and such. My blood's not made of milk. I just know there's bucks in there with horns as big as elk. Come this weekend, I'll be there, just me with my stick and string. No ghost is going to scare me off. I'm going to do my thing. Saturday morning in pre-dawn light, I crept along the creek. The smells were old. I heard a noise. I felt my knees go weak. A monster buck suddenly appeared through the trees upon a rise. I drew my bow. The cedar shaft flew just like it had eyes. The buck was down. His rack was huge. I need help to get him out. I turned to leave, but something made me stop and turn about. And there he stood, beside my buck. He was ghostly, pale and thin. His scalp was gone. His naked body wore nothing but a grin. I was frozen in my tracks. I couldn't move or speak. I was standing face to face with the ghost of Armstrong Creek. He spoke to me. The sound was strange, like nothing I'd heard before. "Good shot, old coon," he said to me. I thought he might say more, but he turned and vanished in the shadows. My legs suddenly found life. I flipped that buck upon his back and pulled my hunting knife. A slash, a pull, his guts were out. I grabbed him by a horn. 200 pounds of whitetail pulled as easy as if newborn. Now there's more big bucks back in there, boys, but they're not for the meek. If you think you're brave, my friend, try hunting Armstrong Creek. And I wrote this little thing about it a while back. It's on my website, and I'll read it to you. Nestled in a secluded valley, far off the beaten path, on the banks of a small stream, is a little cabin called Shrewsbury Haven. Originally built in 1936, this rustic pine cabin was only recently moved to its current location. The original intent was to just have a hunting camp, a place to hang your hat and your bow. But Shrewsbury Haven has become more than that, much more. Shrewsbury Haven has revealed itself an enchanting environment where the bow hunting experience is enhanced tenfold. It's a place of peace and tranquility, a place where a person can recharge their spirit, feed their soul, and share wonderful times with fellow bow hunters. In today's modern world, we have created for ourselves an unnatural environment. But God created man to be part of nature, and although we may survive in our big cities and urban neighborhoods, we need the wilderness to help keep us mentally healthy. Shrewsbury Haven is an oasis where we must return as often as we can to drink deep of its healing waters and thus be sustained until we come to this place again. And that's the place I go every fall for 10 days with 8 of the best friends I've ever had in my life, and we just have a great time. It's a story about our camp, and we call this Shrewsbury Haven, and it sits down in a valley, which we call Shrew Hollow. The poem goes like this. Down in Shrew Valley by old Armstrong Creek sits a little log cabin with wood floors that squeak. In the evening, the soft glow of gaslights are there, while outside there are whitetails, gray wolves, and black bear. Up on the oak ridge, the acorns are falling. The bucks, they are grunting, the does, they are calling. So we slip in our stand, and we wait for a buck. If the wind is just right, all we'll need is some luck. So come hang up your buck on our deer hanging rail. Then sit by the fire and tell us your tale. For the stories of hunting is why we come here, to hear the stories and to hunt for the great white-tailed deer. That's why we come here. I think every outdoorsman has at some time or another camped in the woods and sat around the fire. This is a poem about the fire. The night is dark, but I have a friend that keeps the dark at bay. Warm and friendly, it draws me close, sending dark and cold away. I watch the flames as they dance and play, turning wood to coals of red. The glow soon fades, and the cold creeps in, reminding me it must be fed. As I stare so deep into the flames, what do I expect to see? Could it be ghosts from long ago that are waiting to speak to me? Men have stared into such flames for hundreds or thousands of years. In the woods at night, the bravest man can know his inner fears. But I have a friend, so I fear not, for it keeps me in warmth and light. I'm safe and warm in the friendly glow of my fire throughout the night. Another story about Nancy when we were hunting in state land back before tree stands, before bait. This was in the early 60s, I think 1961, when she shot her first deer with her longbow, or actually recurve. And I put her in a blind by a runway and told her to let the deer come by on the trail and then stand up and shoot over top of the blind. And she was on one of those folding canvas chairs, and so when some deer came by, she stood up and the stool creaked, spooked the deer. So they took off. So she sat down, and pretty soon here comes some more deer. She did the same thing. They took off. Third time, she picked a hole in the blind and shot through the hole and put an arrow in the deer and got her first deer with it. And but she loved it. She loved just being outdoors, and and hunting, and it was women like that are pretty rare. And took all the fat off, took the glands off from under the arms and everything, and got him in a pot and got him cooking on the stove. So while this porcupine was cooking, I grabbed my bow and I kind of walked out. We were near a big meadow, and out in this meadow was one of these posts that stuck up that had a what is that, a martin house that they used to put on those posts or something for birds or whatever. And as I'm watching across this meadow, I see a man walk out of the woods on the other side. And he had a green uniform on, and he walks right to that post and checks it out, and then he brings out a clipboard and writes something down. And he starts walking across the field, kind of angling toward me. And I'm sitting on this log, just kind of watching him, and he just was not paying much attention. He didn't see me there, and he walked probably only about 30 feet from me, and as he got abreast of me, I said, "Hi there." And he jumped about 2 feet. And, "Oh my God," he said, "you scared me." And he said, we got to talk, and he said, what are you doing out here? He noticed my bow. I said, "My wife and I are camped over the hill here in a teepee." He says, "A teepee?" He says, "I got to see this." So we walk over there. I take him over to camp, and I holler at Nancy. I said, "Nancy, come here. We got company." So she comes out, and he's looking around the camp. He sees this porcupine skin hanging there. And he says, "I see you shot a porcupine." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Nancy's cooking him. That's going to be our supper." He said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Porcupine is really good." He says, "I can't wait to get back to the office." He says, "They're not going to believe me when I tell them I found two people out here camping in a teepee, hunting with longbows, eating porcupines." This particular story happened in the early days of hunting up here in this area, before the cabin was here, just after we bought the property, and I had pulled a little trailer. It was like probably a 14-foot trailer up here, and I was staying in that. And it was a nice fall day, and I had done some scouting. One of the reasons I wanted to come up here to the UP is because I wanted to be able to hunt in a more remote area and hunt without bait, and to make it, like I had said earlier, more challenging. And so I had done some scouting, and I found a pretty good line of scrapes up on the hill here. And so I had decided to put a tree stand up in a tree there near a scrape. And I sat on that scrape for a couple of days and didn't see anything. And finally, the last day I sat there, it was a nice sunny day to start with. And as it got closer to evening, it started to get darker, and clouds come in, and all of a sudden snowflakes coming, big snowflakes. And it was snowing pretty hard, and the ground was getting covered pretty quickly. And all of a sudden, through this white mist of snow, I saw horns coming. And it was a buck, and he was a pretty nice one. And he kind of circled the scrape, and as he came by me, he was going at kind of a slow walk. I drew my longbow, and I thought I would lead him just a bit because he was walking. But when the bow thumped, he stopped. So my arrow took him in the neck instead of in the lungs where I had intended it to go. And but it must have touched the vertebrae because he went down and thrashed a little bit, but then he got up and took off, running down the hill. And as he ran, he was grunting. I'd never heard this before, a deer grunting as he was running. But he ran down the hill and toward a cedar swamp, and crossed into the swamp and disappeared. And so I didn't have a flashlight with me, so I went back to my trailer and got my I think it was a 6-cell flashlight and some extra batteries, and come back. And by that time, the ground was getting pretty covered with snow, and it had covered up any blood that was available. But I knew about where he went in the swamp, so I went in there. And as I got into the cedars and got underneath where the snow hadn't covered yet, I found the blood trail, and I was actually down on my hands and knees with my flashlight tracking him, and it was quite a long ordeal tracking this buck. And then finally, when I found him, it was pretty dark. It was late at night. In the meantime, my flashlight went out. I had to change the batteries. And so I ended up finding the buck, nice 8-point, nice wide 8-point. And so I dressed him out, And I thought, well, and I didn't have a rope. I forgot to bring a rope with me, and I thought, I'll come back in the morning and get him. And I took the bowstring off of my longbow and bent down a sapling and tied the string to his horns and to the sapling, and then pushed him up and propped him up where his head and shoulders was off the ground, more to kind of help drain him a little bit, you know. And then I left and I went back to my trailer and crawled in and went to bed. The next morning I opened the door of my trailer and there was about 1.5 feet to 2 feet of snow on the ground. So, long story short, by the time I got into the swamp, I had no idea where that buck was. I had a pretty good idea, but I didn't make any markers or anything like that. And so I looked and I looked and I looked, and probably after about half hour, 45 minutes, I see these horns sticking up above the snow. and so if I hadn't have propped him up like that, I wouldn't have found him. But I found him and got him out of there, and I call that one the snowstorm buck.
We was mountain men. I remember when we was mountain men. Seems like it weren't long ago. We was bullhide tough. We played real rough. There weren't a man that we couldn't throw. When we drawed down on a deer, our eyes was clear, and that critter was soon on a pole. We mountain men, who'd have thought back then that we'd ever grow old? We shoot light bows now, bad shoulders, you know, but we stalk and we get real near. We hone them arrows till they'll shave hair, and we still manage to kill us some deer. We still rendezvous and we still count coup, but it ain't like it used to be. Our joints is worn, and it's hard to run when you got a titanium knee. Then there's them pipes. You just never know if they're in the shape they should be. So the doc, he says, "Son, I think it's time you had a colonoscopy." Can't sleep no more on the cold, hard ground since we got that new plastic hip. Used to drink a whole jug round the fire at night. Now it's just a few little sips. The day'll come not far down the road when they'll want to put us in a home. They'll say we're too old to be out in the cold, too old to hunt on our own. When they come to take me to that old folks' home on some cold, dark, rainy night, they'll sure be surprised when this old coon says, "Boys, that'll be after the fight." But if they win and I'm put into that fearsome, lonely place to swaller pills 'cause I got the chills 'mongst wrinkles on my face, then remember me, y'all is still free, and hold of the mountain creed, to never rest, but fight your best, till the old coon is finally freed.
But it's a poem that was kind of spontaneous. My wife and I, Nancy, were going down the road one day and going somewhere, and there was a couple of crows on a roadkill. And as I got there, they flew away, and this poems to me, they kind of come out of the air. All of a sudden, these words just start coming into my mind. So I started making up this poem, and my wife used to be a secretary, and she knew how to take shorthand. So I said, "Nancy, write this down." I said, "so I won't forget it." So she grabs a pad and she starts writing this poem down in shorthand, and it goes like this. 2 old crows setting in the street, helping themselves to a roadkill treat. Along come a car doing 85. Now those 2 old crows are no longer alive. Now they've become a part of the mess, mixed right in with all the rest. Before too long there'll be a red spot, and no one will know if they were crows or not. The moral of the story is to kill your own meat, and don't eat your meals in the middle of the street. The bow and arrow is centuries old. It was designed by man to kill. Down through the years, many stories were told. One name stands out, Howard Hill. His love for the bow was a lifelong affair. His ability has never been matched. This man from the South had a quality rare. The list is long, the game he dispatched. A hunter without equal was this man Hill, but he was more than just good with a bow. He was larger than life, with a cast iron will, a man you'd be real proud to know. He did more for his sport than any man. He brought archery to the public eye. Movies and books were his master plan. His dream was to kill the Big Five. Children adored him. Grown men were his fans. His charm gave people a lift. The strength was great in his arms and his hands. He said his talent was a God-given gift. Now Mr. Hill has gone on to his Lord. He left a void that no one can fill. In the hearts of all archers, the memory is stored of the man and the legend, Howard Hill. This is called The Essence of Archery. The stick and string will always be the essence of true archery. A simple bow of wood or glass with classic lines as in the past, arrows fletched with turkey wings. Give voice to shafts and make them sing. There's something about the arrow's arc as it leaves the bow to find its mark. It stirs the soul like nothing might when eye and hand guide arrow's flight. Its path is beauty to the eye. The thrill will linger till the next will fly. Who knows what stirs our passion so, this love to shoot a simple bow? We only know it's deep within our very being until life will end. Here's one here. It's titled The Love of Archery. What is there about a traditional bow that captivates us so? It's only a simple stick and string, it's only a simple bow. Is it the feel of the bow in your hand when you draw it to your face, using your strength to bend the limbs to send the arrow on its race? Or is it the sight of a feathered shaft as it flies straight to its mark? Maybe it's the soft low hum of the bow that's music to your heart. Could it be the sight of a white-tailed buck when you're looking down the shaft, or the thrill you feel as you kneel by him and know that he is yours at last? Then there's the archers of long ago whose voice comes in the still of the day, creating feelings that fill your heart when you hear what they have to say. I believe it's all of this. It's very clear to see. It's the love we have for archery, the way it was meant to be. I used to, before I retired from working for General Motors, sometimes I would maybe get in a little heated discussion with the boss or something, and I would come home feeling a little bit angry maybe, or a little bit sour, and I would just grab my bow and I'd go out and I'd start shooting. And it wasn't long before those bad feelings went away. And so I wrote this one here. It's called The Healing Power of the Bow. When the day sometimes is hard to bear and things don't go your way, just string your bow and grab some arrows and go outdoors and play. To me, there's nothing more pleasing than a feathered shaft in flight. It calms me and brings me peace. It makes things seem all right. The bow has always been there like a faithful, loyal friend. It's a therapeutic wonder when those graceful limbs will bend. I give thanks most every day for this simple stick and string and for its healing power and the joy that it can bring. This is a poem I wrote for my mother. My mother lived to be 92 years old. She's been gone for a while now, but I wrote this poem for her a while back, and it's called Forward. The years go by, and before you know it, your youth is gone, and now you show it. Youthful shine and unwrinkled skin will never be your look again. Color's going from your hair as white and gray take over there. Your knees no longer let you run. Wind in your face, that joy is done. Physical strength of your early years is waning, replaced by fears. Fear of losing what once was you. Fear of not doing what you once could do. Don't believe that all is lost. This look you have, you've paid the cost. Those lines and wrinkles on your skin are maps of battles fought hard to win. The drawn, tired look, the signs of strain, that's evidence of suffered pain. Wear this look as a badge of life. It shows you've gone through trial and strife. Experience, the price is high, and you'll keep paying until you die. So just set your sights on goals ahead, and don't look back, but forward instead.
When I was a young man looking for a soulmate, I was dating, and when I'd go out with a girl and conversation eventually got around to one of the important things in my life, which was hunting and bows and arrows. And normally when it got to that point, the girls would just kind of roll their eyes and showed no interest. But when I met Nancy, she was interested. She was an outdoor girl, and she had some experience with bows and arrows from her cousin, who was a national archery champion. So it was the thing that we shared together, and we hit it off right off the bat. And she was my hunting partner for 58 years after that. I lost her in August of 2016, and I wrote this poem called She Was Here. I remember the day that we met. It doesn't seem that long ago. That red-haired girl would steal my heart, but then how was I to know? I remember the day we were married. We vowed our love without fear. We signed our names, both mine and hers, so I know that she was here. I close my eyes and I see her face. I heard her call my name today. I see her touch wherever I look. I guess it'll always be that way. In our house I see her things, the things that she held dear. I hold them, touch them, and smell them, and I know that she was here. I see her kind and gentle spirit, and our sons and our daughter too. She passed it on to our grandkids and great-grandkids before she was through. I try to remember every day those memories that I hold so dear. For as long as I have these memories, I'll know that she was here. I cherish the time we had together, but God's promise is very clear. I'll see her again when He calls me home, because He knows that we were here. True love is forever. Like the arrow is to the bow, separate, but yet still one. When the arrow leaves the bow for her journey past the sun, she'll wait there until it's time when she'll meet her bow again. For true love never dies. True love never ends.
For some of you old guys, and if you're not there yet, you will be someday, it's called Memories of Yesterday. Yesterday, when I was young, there were so many bows just waiting to be strung, so many feathered shafts to send upon the wind. I never thought the time for that would ever end. 1,000 hunts I planned. I dreamed they'd be so grand, but some just slipped away like weak and shifting sand. I never seemed to have the time to make all of them real. Now late in life, it seems I've lost some of my zeal. Yesterday, when I was young, the hills I climbed were steep, but I crested on the run. Now it seems the valleys are where I prefer to be. My legs are old. No longer do they want to carry me. Youth and strength, it seemed, could conquer anything. No challenge left untried, no bow I couldn't string. I gave no thought to what the future held for me. I only knew that arrows on the string would set me free. Now yesterday has passed me by, but I still like to watch my arrows as they fly. The bows I shoot are not as heavy as before, and I don't shoot them quite as often anymore. Those hunts of years gone by, though they're in the past, I have such sweet memories, and those memories will last. So I can relive again those golden times back when. Those golden times back when I was young. This is kind of a life story. It's called A Boy's Dream, A Man's Life. The bow and arrow spoke to me when I was 5 years old. It said, "Come play with me, young lad, if you should be so bold." The singing string and whispering shaft was music to my soul. I knew it was a part of me when I was 12 years old. The bow was small for a lad so tall as I grew so long and lean. A new bow I sought and finally bought when I turned 16. The years they flew, and at 22, a bow for the bride I took. Together we hunted for white-tailed deer from our camp by a babbling brook. Soon a little bow hung alongside the bows of Mom and Dad, then another, and still another. 3 little bowmen we finally had. As time went by, the children grew, then grandchildren came along. Once again, the longbow sang its captivating song. This new generation was soon to learn the wonders of stick and string. They watched as Grandpa showed them the joys the bow could bring. No one can count the arrows that this old man has sent to flight. Someday he'll shoot his very last shaft into the murky night. But for now, there's great-grandchildren to teach before my time is through. This old man still loves his bow at the age of 82.